Yo, how's it going, everyone? So, I published a video a couple days ago, yesterday, 2 days ago, I don't know. But that video was about creating executive assistants with Claude as a Claude project. And I'm about to create a new one. I just listened to a podcast, maybe give some context, back it up there. And I have a tool already built out that is quite old and it's not that good. So I want to rebuild it, and I thought it would be a good place to just hop on and kind of show you how I do it. It's very spontaneous, nothing planned. Just me thinking that could be interesting for some people out there. So if that sounds interesting, stick around and we'll dive into the weeds. So what I've done is listen to this podcast. It's called AI and I, a very good podcast on AI things. And it was about building sticky AI products. And so what I was looking for was the transcript. I saw it on mobile. There's probably smarter ways to do this, with tools and some SaaS that lets you do it. But what I've done was essentially just copy paste the transcript, and I plopped it into this tool that I've built again some time ago. But we're going to rebuild this from scratch. And what I think is like really powerful as a tool is essentially I can take any podcast, anything that has a transcript, and transform it into both a summary. So this I'll copy paste and I'll put it in ClickUp where I have a lot of documents, or I can put it in Notion or whatever you prefer. Doesn't really matter, but I can always come back to it, and I can also ask it questions, right? So essentially here it says frontier model. So there was like one thing that caught my attention was like the guy saying like, hey, startups can use frontier models while big companies cannot. And so if I see that in my summary, I'm like, okay, what does that mean? What is the context? And so essentially, because this chat has all the context, I can just go back and ask it, right? And so it says, why can startups use frontier models and big companies can't? And essentially will spit out the reasons that were given. And I think this is better if you're looking into tools to have everything in the context, because RAG can fail to, which is an alternative to do this, right, would be via RAG, so that you upload files, the files are so big. It will depend on the quality of the file and like the data preparation and all that to make it good. And so that's why I think this is the right way to approach this. And so that is all the context. And we're going to essentially build this tool here now, rebuild it, go into projects, create a project. And how I usually do this is I go to Claude Workbench, which is essentially a tool to test prompts and build prompts and to see your, everything you have used for the API and stuff like that. But essentially, go in here, say generate a prompt, and then you say create a system, or it asks you for describe your task. I don't really have a process for this, so I just make it up along the way. So it's like, I want to summarize podcasts and newsletters. I don't know, doesn't matter. And now we want to tell it what we want to get out of it, right? Make sure it extracts all the key insights. So essentially, this is like, what do we want? And lessons. This will depend on what you want the tool to do. But right now, I want to summarize something, right? Key insights, lessons learned, strategic, and things I can use for strategy. So essentially, Nichemates is my own kind of holding company, and I want to know what of this is useful for strategy. And I am going to add this here because that will further customize the result based off of what's most important for me. And I'll show you in a second how to do that. So essentially, this will generate a prompt. Usually, it will put it out as kind of a API friendly format. So essentially this is summary, main topics, key insights. So this will be the result and some sort of conclusion. The prompt itself is usually quite good. The problem is here, this is not very copy paste friendly format, right? So this is more, yeah, like almost like an XML type format. So what we can do is to be more specific in the prompt before, and I should have, I think I can iterate now, but it takes quite a while. If you want to change it now, you can say prompt, improve prompt, and then you can say, I want this to output markdown, because I want markdown so I can move it to Notion or whatever other tool I'm using. Blah, blah. And what I will do now is essentially take your prompt, usually also examples. So if you can provide examples here, which will help to further improve the prompt. Let's see what it does. Initial draft. So it goes ahead and runs a bunch of steps on top. And you can already see that it now outputs markdown. At least the example looked like it was markdown. And in the end, you will have an improved version of the prompt. Let's see, pre-filled. Okay, open workbench, which usually comes as a version 2. Let's see. All right, so what we can do now before we build the tool, you can build it immediately. We can go in and we can copy paste the transcript. Again, there's probably smarter ways to do this. This is all of it. No, it's too much. Okay. But for the sake of doing it and getting it done, let's do it like this. You can test. So you'll go on here and you say, this is the transcript that I want to summarize. And you can see in the response how the result will look like. In topics. Okay, so this looks, I guess, fine. The main topics isn't really marked down, right? I mean, it is just text. So we could think about improving this here, maybe with an example that it, or removing them. Conclusion. So markdown will look like this. Yeah, I mean, let's have main topics twice. Main topics. Okay. All right. I mean, this is good enough, right? For now. So let's go ahead and take this. Go in here, say we want a content summarizer, podcast summarizer, whatever. This I usually leave empty because it doesn't matter. And then we have project instructions here, which is essentially a system prompt. And I think this is useful because then whenever you pick the tool, you already prime the system prompt to be what exactly you want to do. So essentially you'll build these small tools. Each of them have like one specific use case. And you can make that available for others within your team or just yourself. And we'll paste the prompt here. I'm not 100% sure, but I think that this actually overrides the system prompt that Claude comes with, which is good because that one is kind of bad. So it helps to get rid of all the generic crap that they have to put to make sure that Claude works, for every kind of use case you throw its way. Um, but yeah, so let's save that. And if I want to add more content here, which is essentially, if you remember in the instructions here, I actually don't know this. Niche rates. Okay, niche markets. Okay, I think it took niche mates and put niche markets, so that is a problem. So always make sure you review this properly. At least test it out, in the workbench, or test it out in here. But again, it's a work in progress as everything. So we have that here, and essentially you can see here that I have a bunch of these, right? For different kind of use cases. But that's not what I want to show you. I wanted to go here, and essentially what we have here is, which I think is a nice feature that Claude has. I don't know about GPT, if it like wants to work, because essentially there's files here that you can throw into Google Docs, and by doing that, we can make sure that it updates, right? So this thing is like static, but if I throw something into Google Docs, we can write there from somewhere else. So essentially, I can inject context into Claude, not via the API, just like the paid version of Claude, essentially, to have new information coming in, right? Why we use that mostly is if we have, let's say, 3 or 4 tools that all need the same context, we extract it into a document, and then we can update the document, and then all of the tools will update at the same time. So we're creating a single source of truth for that specific context piece. But yeah, again, like if you had some sort of automation running, because this can also be a spreadsheet, for example, right? Or can it be? Let me see. Not that yeah, I think it can. We haven't used a spreadsheet, but I think it can be a spreadsheet. And so you can use that to write from another process to that spreadsheet, and then you're able to, ask questions here. For example, if you had some sort of reporting for your search traffic, which we have right now. What I do, I always go in and I pull a CSV export, and then I put that into the tool. But if that was automated somehow, and it would just write, to a Google sheet, you could always just go in every day and have the news data because it keeps updating. But yeah, so essentially what do we have here? We have some information on the tech stack, for example, right? So essentially it will use that information to tweak whatever is in here to respond with what's useful. What else do we have? If you do these two, then the data remains static. So only Google Drive will be updating. Let's see, we also put this here. And if we go here, it will open the document for us. So then we can add things here. And then it will, like I said, it will update, which I think is quite useful for certain use cases, not for everything. I wouldn't do it for everything because oftentimes you don't need things updating in the background, and you can just go in here and edit it, or you can just add more content, as text. And then you can see it later. So yeah, I don't do it for everything, but I thought it was interesting, and I didn't mention it in the video that I made before. So now you know. And then let's test this again with the same. Do we still have this here? No. With the same transcript. Oh, Jesus. Right. So now I don't need any message here because the thing already knows what I want. So usually you just have to plop the the text or the transcript or whatever, and then it will already know, okay, now I need to summarize this because it's part of the system prompt, right? All right, so essentially here, niche markets, which I want it to be niche mates, but doesn't really matter. Main topics. All right, so this looks fine. I think there's some shit here with the breakdown that we can go in and we can tweak. This becomes a bit of a pain in here, so I usually have a document for this specifically, because like I can't make this bigger or anything. So yeah, but this should be enough for now. Content. Okay. For any final summary. Okay. Well, this I don't need. Okay. Maybe it helps it to be better. I don't know. It doesn't really. I'll leave it, but I'll change this. And if you change something, you can just go into the same chat. Maybe even just go in here. I guess here you can't. And it will already pick up the change system prompt. So you don't need to test a new or start a new conversation, which is also useful because yeah, you might want to go in and tweak the prompt and then use the same conversation if you've built up a lot of context, because Claude doesn't let you duplicate conversations, as far as I know, at least. I'm actually thinking about building that because I need that quite often if I just want to branch out into different things, but I want to have a shared context without it being summarized so that I don't have any loss. And then share that with others so they can ask like follow-up questions, for example. But yeah, in that regard, the UX is like not that good for some reason. Did it change? I mean, it's still basically the same, but yeah. So that's how you can build yourself, a kind of Japanese chef knife for any kind of use case that you have, making sure you keep context in sync and yeah, go crazy with that. And essentially, the big pro for this is that you can add, chat functionality to everything. So like, chat with your transcript, chat with whatever you put in here, and come back to it later as well, right? So if we have strategy, which is like what I spent last week on, essentially we have one chat for each project. We have some context. We have a quite big system prompt for this, which I can share with you if you are interested in it. It's not proprietary or anything. I think it's just summarized from some book that I wrote about in my newsletter. But yeah, so essentially, whenever I need to make changes, I just go in and I say, hey, this is something new that I've learned. How can I use that in order to, tweak my strategy so that I always have a kind of running record, at least until I run out of context, which, hopefully won't happen before it gets bigger again. But this is the main kind of usefulness, and why I don't build like agents or whatever for it is essentially that it's less flexible. And again, like a lot of tools, like for example, if Spotify had this, and I could just ask the transcript myself, or I could just ask questions. That would be useful, but they don't. So I can rely on someone else to do it, or I can just quickly go in here and with very, very, very limited amount of effort, essentially just knowing how to write a good prompt. And I didn't even write the prompt myself, right? So even that you don't even have to do yourself. You can just add that to anything out there yourself. And I think again, like having everything in context is useful because it's usually much more accurate and there's less data wrangling you need to do in order to be able to actually have the file properly prepared for RAG. Because like just throwing in PDFs from my perspective, my experience works less good than, for example, taking a PDF, converting to Markdown, and then using that. But hopefully that will get easier. And the RAG APIs from OpenAI will get better, because sometimes it just doesn't work. But yeah, everything in context is good, because it's all of it is there. But obviously, it is more expensive if you run it through the API, because you blow up the context, and it's also limited, right? So if you go over context, you'll have a problem. So it's not possible with everything, but where it's possible, I would highly prefer that over files in RAG. Alrighty, if you want to see more stuff like this, just let me know. Again, very spontaneous walkthrough, and not prepared, not scripted, nothing. But now we have a new tool that I can use, and I'll see you next time.